Pleasure.
Now, the UK's biggest study into extreme sickness during pregnancy, it's known as hyperemesis gravidarum, is being published today.
Based on the data of 5,000 women who shared their experiences with the BBC, it found that more than half of them considered terminating their pregnancy.
Daniela Ralph has been to meet one woman who recorded a video diary about her experiences.
I don't get the normal experience that other people get. I just have to sit here for 9 months and just wait. I still can't eat and I can't drink. And I'm hungry and I'm stressed and I can't sleep. I just want to get to the end of this pregnancy with a baby, alive.
Extreme sickness in pregnancy can be brutal. The condition known as HG can overwhelm you.
I'm so cold.
2 years ago, Laura Anderson kept a video diary of her pregnancy.
This horrible illness just makes you a complete shadow of who you were.
2 years on, and Laura is now mum to Ava.
We had to try very hard to get pregnant, and we'd had 4 miscarriages, and she was very wanted, and she was what kept me going, because I knew the only way to get a baby was to get to that end point, and that's what got me through.
But the pregnancy left her feeling isolated and struggling to get help. She wants other women to get better care and treatment.
The mental journey is actually harder because that's still left over at the end of it, and that doesn't go away as quickly as the physical symptoms. It's 9 months of isolation and feeling completely useless because you can't do anything, and some people have to quit their jobs. Some people have other children that they feel like they're letting down. Obviously treat the physical first, because that can be very dangerous if not, but so can the mental part of it.
Laura had wanted more children, but she's forever changed by her HG experience.
Do you think you'll have any more children?
No. I very much at the end of Ava's pregnancy told myself, I am finally done with HG, and I was happy about that. If I could be promised that I wouldn't have HG, I would definitely have another baby. That is the only reason we're not having another baby.
It's just too risky for you.
Yeah. I can't be a mum if I've got HG.
Well, the first thing to say, I think, is a huge thank you to Laura, who you saw just then, for sharing her experiences and being so honest and giving us access to that video diary. Let's speak to Dr. Caitlin Dean, who's chair of the Charity Pregnancy Sickness Support and was involved in this report as well. Good morning to you, Doctor. I just want to, first of all, it really brought it home, hearing Laura's personal experience when she was pregnant, the sort of despair and the condition she was in.
Yeah, absolutely. And sadly, her experience is really quite common amongst women who are suffering hyperemesis. Her experience is relatively normal for this condition. It's very extreme and it's very isolating, and it limits families, and a lot of babies end up being terminated even though they were desperately wanted.
Now, I know you campaign on this, but there's a reason, isn't there? Because you also had the condition.
I did. I suffered with all 3 of my pregnancies. I did have 3, which is relatively unusual for women with hyperemesis. Many women I know only have 1 child because of this.
Tell us a little bit about that. How was it that you were able to make that decision to have more children? Because by the sounds of what you're saying, the report is outlining, it really can make women think twice. Well, we heard the statistics about thinking about terminations, but also about having further children.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly after my first pregnancy, we really questioned whether or not it was possible to have another pregnancy at all. And yes, I did consider terminating during my first 2 pregnancies. My experience was somewhat different to a lot of other women in that my job wasn't particularly at risk, and we were in a financial position to be able to afford childcare. Our home wasn't at risk and so on. A lot of women in Britain, that's not the case. And if you can't afford childcare and you don't have family support, and if you don't work, then your home is at risk, then clearly the experience is going to be very different, and you may end up having to choose to terminate in order to maintain your financial stability for your other children and keep a roof over their head.
Caitlin, what about help people get at the time? And maybe, and I'm cautious around how to say this because there's a danger of almost immediately belittling it, but the confusion, the grey area between morning sickness or feeling really bad during pregnancy and the condition being something very much more serious.
Yeah, I mean, there is a stigma around hyperemesis still, and that is largely to do with this kind of confusion with morning sickness. Morning sickness is very much a normal part of pregnancy. It's expected. For a lot of people, it's actually quite wanted, particularly if you have a history of miscarriage or struggling to get pregnant. And so everyone expects a bit of morning sickness, but hyperemesis is not morning sickness. It's a severe complication of pregnancy. And prior to the invention of modern antiemetics and IV fluids, it was the leading cause of death in early pregnancy. So it is a very serious condition, and very occasionally women do still die from it. But as a result of this kind of confusion with morning sickness, there is still a stigma around it, and it can be really hard to access treatment. Even I was in my first couple of pregnancies kind of almost mocked for it, and told that it was a normal part of pregnancy. So we need better access to care, and we need better understanding about the condition.
Well, and that brings us right up to the place we are now. You say better access to care. Of course, we know that GPs, the huge waiting lists, very hard to get face-to-face times with GPs to try and get a diagnosis. The problem right now is particularly acute.
Yes, it is indeed, and certainly our charity saw a huge increase in calls during the pandemic. And people being told, well, you've just got pregnancy sickness, we've got a pandemic going on. And that's just not acceptable. Some of those women end up having to end a desperately wanted pregnancy because they're just not able to access secondary care or even primary care with their GPs and so on. Just because there's a pandemic going on, people are still needing treatment. And that's really, for pregnant people, that's particularly difficult when there's this sort of misnomer that they've just got a normal pregnancy.
Dr. Caitlin Dean, thank you for sharing your experience and also talking about the work you do, chair of the charity Pregnancy Sickness Support.
And for details of organisations which offer advice and support with pregnancy-related issues, go online to bbc.co.uk/actionline.
Time now to get the news.